Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the free agent class, starting with the center position. A lot of guys to break down. We're going to break it up into tiers so you know exactly how much depth there is at this position for the different teams around the NBA to pursue. Keith, how are you doing, man? And I'm just excited to dive into free agent stuff here, especially with an entire position.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into this, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And what we're going to do for you guys is the way the vast majority of teams handle their kind of rankings of free agents, and they do it too. It's not just us guys here in the media who love this stuff. It's teams do it this way as well, and both for both the draft and free agency. What they'll do is they'll go and they'll slot every single player into a bucket, and they generally slot them into one of four buckets, and that's starter. Well, let's start at the top. All star. So all stars are anybody who could be an all star, is near being an all star, or is going to get paid like an all star. Then there are starters. Starters are starters, obviously, or guys who play the equivalent to starter minutes. So if you're a high level backup that's going to play, either close to starter minutes, or you're going to play at the ends of games, those kind of things, you're going to fall in that bucket. Then there's rotation, and rotation is that's your players that are in your rotation. It's that simple there. And then everybody else gets put into the fringe category. In the fringe category, think of these as your 12th to 15th man on the standard contracts, your two-way players, guys like that, that are kind of replaceable at the end of a roster. So what we did was for each position, with all of the available free agents this summer, we went through and ranked them all into these different tiers. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go through them. We're gonna start these. So just so Trevor doesn't have to take an inordinate amount of flack, these are my rankings initially, and then he's gonna tell me where he disagrees, and I'm sure y'all will too, which is fine, right? These are just my first pass rankings at these guys, but we're gonna go position by position. We're doing it by the standard positions: center, power forward, small forward, shooting guard, point guard. There's crossover between some of these positions, and we'll talk about guys that could, especially they're maybe a 4 or 5 kind of guy and stuff like that. So, with that said, hopefully that's a good enough preamble for everybody, and then we can go ahead and get started in this. What do you think, Trevor?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go. In fact, here, let me put up the list for everybody to see so you guys can see the center position and all the players who are out there on the free agent market right now. And here's what I love. Before we even start talking about the individual players, what I love about tier-based rankings, and this works in fantasy sports drafts as well. Anybody who's like me and is already getting ready for your fantasy football drafts, it's all about tier-based rankings because then that lets you know how many players are out there in that tier and you can draft accordingly. It's the same way with free agency. Teams can start crossing guys off of the list as players start to sign, and that will give them an idea of where they need to really focus their attention by splitting guys up into tiers rather than a straight list. So you guys can see the list here that's been put together. It's I think it's pretty clear cut. Like Jarrett Allen is the top of this list. There's no debate there, right? Like he's the guy, but he's also the guy that's not going anywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. Restricted free agents, Cavs gave up a first round pick to get him. Unless it gets really silly for some reason, somebody throws him a max offer sheet, and Cleveland has to be like, oh boy, do we want to do that? I don't think that's going to happen. My guess is they come to an agreement before we even get to that point. So yeah, but we want to put him on there. This list accounts for everybody that's still out there. Kevon Looney still on this list. He hasn't officially picked up his option, just if anybody's looking. I know we already talked about that he's going to, so he'll come off once he officially does it. One other thing I want to say too is at the fringe, they're in alphabetical order by last name, because once you're down to that level, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on rankings. But at the top, Jarrett Allen, we already talked about him. I think very clearly the next best guy is Rashawn
Yeah.
Holmes, in my opinion. He had a big season for the Sacramento Kings. Really good player. He's still pretty young as well. He is only, I guess he's not as young. He'll be 28 to start next season, but that's still, for a big man, that's not bad. You're in pretty prime position there, so that's why we have him coming up as second on
I
this
like him a
list.
lot. I mean, he's so athletic. He's the kind of guy where he's not going to shoot a bunch of threes or anything like that, but He's
No.
got the ability to roll hard to the rim. He can make those big physical plays that you need on both ends of the floor. And then, like you said, the age, he's going to be 28 years old, so he's in his prime. You can say, all right, he does traditional big man, or at least the modern version of a traditional big man, right? Protect the rim on one end, rebound,
Yep.
set screens, roll to the basket, catch and finish. Like he does those types of things, but he does it at a level that's a little bit different than some of the other guys on this list. And so that's why you got to like that. 14 and 8 roughly, and over 60% from the field. I think he's a real nice fit for a lot of teams out there. So I agree with you right there. I've got him at number 2 as well. Number 3, we're gonna have a little conversation about.
All right, let's do it.
Number 3, Daniel Tice. I mean, you saw him. You've watched more Daniel Tice than I have, admittedly, because he was a Boston Celtic. I've gotten a little bit concerned because I like Daniel Tice in a nutshell. I like what he brings, but I look at him as a guy where one of his main values is that he can space the floor as a center, and he shot 28% last season. So should he really be third on the list if he isn't that much of floor space? I mean, at 28%, teams are going to ask him to shoot the three. They're going to say,
Sure.
please take this shot.
Yeah, it was a bad year for Tice. He really struggled last year, and I think a lot of that was he was playing out of position quite a bit. Both Boston and Chicago, both teams played him as the 4 quite a bit, and he's not a 4; he's a 5. So that I think kind of made things a little bit of a mess for him. I don't think he was getting the open looks going against opposing 5s the way he was used to getting. His first couple years in Boston, he shot much better from behind the arc. Why I separated him, and it gets really close here with him, Kelly Olynyk, Montrezl Harrell. You could really talk me in any order.
Yeah.
Is I think he's a better defensive player than either of those two, and so much of the center position is about can you defend? Can you hold your own there? And that's why I have Tice ahead of those two guys. And then Olynyk, I think Olynyk is probably the best all-around player of that grouping of 3 there. And I think that's why I have him just slightly ahead of Harrell, who's probably the best rebounder and probably I almost said best offensive player, but I don't know if that's necessarily true because he's such a dependent player. He's not going to get his own baskets the way Olynyk kind of can on occasion, can dribble into a shot. But I think Harrell, he's such a defined skill set. And again, I know a lot of people, might be one more people, like, but you have him as a starter. He doesn't really start, but he plays starter level minutes in a usual year. No, I know he necessarily didn't with the
No.
Lakers, but I think on most teams he probably would have played starter level minutes. I just think it was a clunky fit for him in LA next to Anthony Davis and then there are other bigs that they had.
I will say, just a little bit in Tice's defense is that he shot 52% from the field despite shooting 28% from like that's pretty impressive to have that
Yeah.
high of a field goal.
Underrated finisher.
Right, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
pretty good. But
Yeah.
but in terms of the Trez, the Kelly Olynyk debate, look, Olynyk is a very very high quality three. I believe he's right around 40. You'll absolutely take that out of a big, not necessarily your traditional bruising big man, but I really like what
No.
he can bring out there on the floor. He has a history of lighting up the Lakers in particular, so my opinion of him is going to be particularly inflated because of that. But I like what Kelly Olynyk brings to the table. I think that he is a really nice offensive fit for a lot of teams, and especially in an NBA where we're seeing more and more teams go small. He's the kind of guy that you
Yeah.
can put out there at the 5 and can really space the floor for you and can keep that 3-point shooting going for your squad. Montrezl Harrell, I mean, we could do a whole show on Montrezl Harrell at this point. The challenge with him, and he's an incredible player. He's incredibly talented. I can't get over his finishing at the rim for a dude who is 6'7". He's 6'7", and he finishes over guys that are much, much bigger than him consistently, and he does it at a highly efficient level. But the problem that you have is that he doesn't shoot threes, and he's not really quick enough to defend 4s, but the true 5s can overpower him. So trying to figure
Yeah.
out where to put him on the floor defensively can be really tough. I know some people have said, "Oh, well, he really needs to be a 4." Not really. I mean, he's more used to defending 5s than anything else. The true bigs like Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, they're going to be way too much for him. They will absolutely roast him. But then on the other end of the floor, he needs to go against the slower true 5s in order to take advantage of
Yep.
his quickness, which he's extremely quick off the bounce. He's pretty good getting to the rim. And then, of course, we know the work that he can do on the board. So he is a good player. It's a tough fit, though, for a lot of teams. And so that's the challenge with Montrezl Harrell.
Yeah, I think Harrell's best fit is as a sixth man, where you can bring him off your bench and you say, just play hard, play with energy. Basically, what he did for the Clippers. Again, I know it was a little bit of a weird fit with the Lakers at times, but I think he still played hard when he was with the Lakers. I never felt like I was watching him like, well, this guy's not bringing it. But yeah, I think that's your best bet. Put him in there because I think, again, second unit bigs, he's kind of overmatches them, right? He's too quick for most of them. His lack of size is not going to hurt him against second unit big men. He's probably limited because you're probably not going to have him on the floor at the end of close games because he can't really shoot all that much, and he's not a rim presence to as a deterrent near the basket. So I do think that limits him. But yeah, I still think when you're looking at the guys immediately behind him, who we'll start getting into now, I think he's a better player than all of them because of that versatility to come off the bench, and that's probably the role he's looking at this offseason. Next, I put Serge Ibaka on the list. I think Ibaka is probably at the point where he should probably be coming off the bench
Yeah.
for a team, or he should be one of those starters who plays 25 minutes a night, kind of starts each half. But again, he can still shoot the ball. And because he can step out and shoot, he can still block some shots. The reason why I pushed him down a little bit, otherwise I probably would have had him slightly higher, is the back injury worries me at
Yeah.
his age. He's 32 now, or he'll be 32 at the start of the season. So that's a little bit concerning with him. So that's just why I slid him down slightly on the list.
And then you're looking at Andre Drummond, who's another guy that we know in Lakers land know quite a bit about. Drummond, look, he's certainly not
I'm sorry.
he's certainly not the worst center out there, but he's not he's got all-star appearances on his record. He's not an all-star caliber center. That's just not what he is. He can do some good things, but when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong to the point where it really stands out. Like when he makes a mistake, it's a bad mistake. It's missing an easy lob. It's finding ways to miss shots that nobody should be able to miss. Things of that nature, fumbling the basketball out of bounds, things like that. But he can also make some nice plays as well. He's quicker in terms of his lateral movement than I would have anticipated. He's still a solid guy to turn to, but it's not like you get him and you just say, "Oh, we're good at the center position. 30 minutes a night for Andre Drummond. Good. We're all set." But I do think he's better than some people give him credit.
Yeah, and I would have slotted him in the rotation section, but I do think someone is going to pay him and play him like a starter level player. Even if he doesn't start for a team, which I think he probably still will, he's still going to get his 25, 28 minutes a night off the bench for a team because he can rebound. He's still a big target around the basket. I'm just not a fan overall. I don't, I'd like to see him. Or let me rephrase. I would have liked to see him really taking off a chance, better advantage of this opportunity that he had with the Lakers, where it was, you're playing with a bunch of really good players and you just need to be the best version of you that you can be. And he just didn't to me. I don't think he took as much advantage of that as he was. Speaking of taking advantage, the last guy that I have in the starter category, Nerlens Noel,
Yeah.
really good year with the Knicks. He's somebody now who you could look at saying, yeah, this guy can be our starting center. We're down to, once we get past Harrell, these are all mid-level exception type of money for these guys.
And
I
it
don't
might
think
even
any
be
of them
for
are going to
Harold.
get.
I mean, depending
Yeah,
on how the
yeah,
market
maybe
breaks.
for Harold too. Yeah, could be for Olynyk, could be for
Absolutely.
Tice too. I mean, those guys could all be there. The only guys I feel really confident that will get more than the mid level are Allen and Holmes. I think that they both will. But with Noel, I think your challenge there is somewhat limited offensive player, but man, he can be a menace defensively. We saw that. He had some really good minutes in the playoffs too. No, he's played with good people. I think you got to pair him with a really good point guard that can really work with him and pick and roll, get him set up. The Knicks got a lot more mileage out of it than you would think with like Julius Randle and him running 4 or 5 pick and rolls. But I really like Nerlens Noel, so that's why I've got him kind of at the bottom end of that starter group there because that's where I think he slots in compared to the next group of guys who I have all in the rotation group.
No, I think that's right. Having Nerlens Noel up there. I mean, look, the $72 million contract that got away, right? We always think about that whenever we talk Nerlens Noel. But
Yeah.
but this is a guy who can do what teams are looking for from a modern big man in terms of protecting the rim, in terms of pulling hard to the basket, finishing. He can do all of those things, and I think he can do them at a level a little bit higher than some of these other guys. Maybe we could talk a little bit about Mitchell Robinson, but I got to get into the next guy on the list here. This is one of my favorites. I feel like Robin Lopez is that guy where if you had your heart set on, like, I don't know if it was Andre Drummond or Trez or whoever that was in that kind of starter section and you missed out on them, you could turn to Robin Lopez and get similar production. Maybe you can't play him quite
Yeah.
as many minutes, but for probably half the price.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you could have really talked me into Robin Lopez should maybe be on the back end of the starter, which is why he's right there. Because yeah, every team he's been on, he's played pretty close to starter minutes, other than when he backed up his brother in Milwaukee. But yeah, I think he's a guy, whether he is your starter or he's your backup, and he has to come in when your starter goes down. You know what you're going to get out of him. Good
Yeah.
screener, good rebounder in his area, good box out guy, pretty good defender. He can actually pass more than people think. He's shown the ability to do some scoring out of the post in the past. So yeah, I think Robin Lopez is a pretty good player, and I think you're absolutely right. You miss out on the top tier guys, you can get pretty good production out of Robin Lopez for a chunkier MLE, just like the Wizards did this past year.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I would be turning to if I was a team in that situation. Mitchell Robinson, look, he's restricted. He's not going anywhere. I mean, if he was unrestricted though, I would expect him to get, like, if we're looking at this rotation block here, I would expect him to be the highest paid out of this block just because of the youth, the
Yeah,
upside. That's our teams.
that's
Teams
it.
will pay for that. So I don't want to look at this and say,
Yep.
oh, Robin Lopez will get the exact same amount as Mitchell Robinson. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, Mitchell Robinson only 23. So he's right there with Jared Allen as the youngest guys in this class. They're actually they were both born in April of 1998. So they're the same, basically the same exact age. Just Allen's a far more proven player. He's been healthy throughout his career. He's done more when he's been given minutes. Robinson's been a little all over the place. Last year was really looking pretty good and then suffered a bunch of injuries. So we'll see what happens. He may not even get to the market. The Knicks may just pick up their team option and let that go. It's kind of 50-50 on which way that should go, because if they decline it, then he's a restricted guy and they can match any offers he would get, and they really kind of control the process. If he doesn't, if they pick it up next year, he'll be unrestricted. And if he has a breakout year, that could make it tough to retain him. So, you might just, pick it up and kind of, just play it out. So we'll see, where that goes. But yeah, I think, Mitchell Robinson, good quality player. Then we're not going to spend a ton of time on the rest of
No.
these guys, because now it starts to really get into personal preference. I think Cody Zeller is a guy who's pretty good. I think if he becomes your, 25-minute a night center, or he's your backup for 15 to 20 minutes, I think you're looking pretty good. With him, I think Enes Kanter, as much as we all beat him up defensively, he's going to go out there and get you 10 points a night and 8, 9
Yep.
rebounds off the bench.
Especially on the offensive glass.
He's probably the best offensive rebounder in the game, by terms of, who actually plays decent minutes. I really like Kem Birch just because I think he's all hustle. He's going to defend. He's going to rebound. He's pretty good. Willie Cauley-Stein, similar-ish to Kem Birch. Just I want to say he's slightly older. Yeah, he's actually younger. Well, shows you what I know there. But yeah, and then Dwight Howard, the veteran, and then you get into a lot of veteran kind of guys who all look similar. One guy I want to point out towards the bottom of the rankings, Tony Bradley.
Yeah.
I think Tony Bradley did some stuff with Philly that proved he could maybe be a quality backup center in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if he's somebody that Oklahoma City maybe keeps around, especially after trading Moses Brown to the Celtics. Maybe OKC says, all right, we don't have a lot of true bigs on this roster. We'll keep you around on a value contract. And then the other guy, I'm not going to quit, is Harry Giles. That guy just flashes when he gets to play. He's going to be somebody, Trevor, you and I are going to be doing this show 6 years from
We're
now.
going to talk
You're
about
going
his
to be like,
potential.
you stop with Harry Giles already, right? Enough already, man. And I believe in him. And then Nathan Knight. I don't know how many people know him. He's a two-way player, played for the Hawks this year, but got a lot of run when they had a lot of injuries up front, and he can actually play. He's a little bit better than your average two-way guy. So that's why I've got him at the end of the rotation players.
I'll admit, Keith, I thought that might have been a name that you just made up and threw in there just to
Nope,
test me, just because
they're all real.
for alliteration sense anyway that you just threw that in there. No, I don't. I haven't seen a whole lot of Nathan Knight, but you know what? There's a number of guys on this list where look, if you're a team and you're looking for that backup big, there's a lot of options here where if you miss on one guy, oh, bummer. I can go get pretty much the same production out of the next guy on the list. And yes, there are differences between these guys. Willie Cauley-Stein does not play the same as Dwight Howard, does not play the same as Alex Len, right? I mean, you can keep going on and on. The bottom line is they're all going to give you kind of similar production here. And you
Yep,
can look at how big that block of players is and how many teams out there right now are looking for centers. Not many. I mean, a lot of teams
yep,
out there now, they'll run a traditional center for what, maybe less than half of their minutes because they're running more small ball.
sure.
So these are the guys that are going to be readily available. And I think a lot of these guys may end up going for the veteran minimum.
That's it. That's a perfect point. That's what I was going to say. I think from Dwight Howard down is a great lock that they're all going to be vet minimum. Take out Kevon Looney because we know he's going to pick up his
God, man.
option for more than that. But I think everybody else probably veteran minimum. Maybe even Cauley Stein and Kem Birch. Let's see if they get squeezed out. Centers tend to be the ones who get squeezed the most in the NBA. The kind of mid tier guys like the Zeller and Cantor, they could get overpaid some. That does still happen, right? There's still that old adage: you pay for size, right? You can't teach size, and all that stuff. So we'll see. Couple people may wonder, like, where's Blake Griffin? Where's PJ Tucker? Where's Paul Millsap? Those guys are on the power forward group. Yes, they can play the five, and that's where these positions kind of meld together. But those guys are still more fours than they are fives. At this point, Blake, if he stays with the Nets, he's a five. But we'll talk about that when we get into the power forwards, and that's a reason why you might see a couple of those guys nudged up the rankings slightly because of that versatility to slide over and play the five a lot more. But yeah, it's a hopefully this gives everybody a sense of as we do these positionally, you're getting a sense of all right, this is what's out there. So when you miss out, don't panic.
Yeah.
If you hear my team was linked to Robin Lopez and missed out and we ended up with Cody Zeller, I mean, yeah, this is just our opinion, but it's probably not all that massive of a drop off. You're probably at that point you're looking for what do I need out of my backup? If I need offense, Ennis Cantor's great, right? If that's what I want offensively. If I need defense, yeah, maybe I want to go more somebody like Dwight Howard or Willie Cauley-Stein.
We talk about supply and demand a lot. Obviously, the supply of bigs plentiful, right? There's a lot of guys out
Yeah,
there, and demand is not that high fives at this point. And so this is why we've talked about this a lot, but the center position is becoming more and more like a running back in football, where you pay for the top level producers, and otherwise you are not breaking the bank for a center. Because, and this illustrates it perfectly, right? If you
yeah.
miss out on a guy and all you want to spend is the veteran minimum, you go on to the next guy and you offer that up, and you can probably find decent production without having to break the bank.
Yeah, so for example, the Lakers
Yeah,
or the Clippers, if they're looking, yeah, and all they're probably going to have to offer is the vet minimum, they should be able to get somebody pretty good for it, right? Because there's a lot of guys there that you can get to come in and play 10, 20 minutes a night, right? Because you probably, if you're those teams, you could get away with 20 minutes a night of two of those guys. There's your 40 minutes, and then your last 8 minutes you go small and you're covered. And that's probably the way these teams are going to be thinking about this quite a bit versus all right, we got to spend the whole mid-level exception of 9.5 million on Daniel Tice.
right.
That may not be the best way to go. It may be better to go and get somebody for 2 million on the veteran minimum and call it good there.
Yeah, and I do think that that's actually the way that teams should go right now. I think that's a better allocation of resources based on the way the NBA is going. I agree with teams that decide to not spend on the center position. I don't think it's
Yep.
necessary at this point. Again, unless you've got a real difference maker, one of those top guys, then okay. Otherwise, I think you rely on what you've got here on this list. Find guys that will come, because then you can allocate those resources elsewhere and beef up your lineup on the
Yep.
wings and at the guard position.
Absolutely. And what you're seeing now too, as well, is there are teams in the league who are, we're not paying more than the mid level for a big man. Just not what we're gonna do. It's not how we're gonna invest resources unless we, luck into one through the draft or develop a guy, somehow into, this, incredible player, and that's it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a little bit of a dying breed, but it's still an important position, because you need one.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
kind
yeah,
of one
you
of
have
those
to have
things
it.
where you feel like you're good until you don't have one, right? And then because no, as much as we love to talk about small ball, you're still talking at most the last 5 minutes of each half is the small ball time. Everybody still has a regular big out there, unless they really don't have one, like the Nets didn't last year
Yeah.
because they really didn't have one, to go to, that they really felt good about. So, but yeah, you still need a big man to, kind of, eat up some minutes there at the five and protect the paint.
Agreed. Agreed. You've got to have it, but you don't spend too much for it. All right, everybody. So make sure you do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel and ring the notification bell as well. And don't forget to like the video. Keith is always reminding me. Make sure you like the video as well. We certainly appreciate all the support that we've gotten, and hope you do continue to view this channel. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that. Until next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.